Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Up front this week, there's an RV touring communities and colleges nationwide. And this is not a tour about recreation. It's gathering health data from 1 million Americans. And it's part of a federal research program called All of Us. The tour visited New Mexico State University, and Michael Hernandez was there.
One size fits all works for Halloween costumes, but it's not the most effective way to treat patients. That's why the National Institutes of Health launched All of Us, a program that aims to speed up health research by collecting data from 1 million adults of all backgrounds.
This process will take about 35 to 45 minutes, depending on how fast you type.
As part of the initiative, tour manager Angie Gonzalez traveled to New Mexico State University in a baby blue RV. She says All of Us aims to improve healthcare for future generations by taking a personalized approach to treating and preventing disease. It's called precision medicine.
So a perfect example is prescription eyewear, because those are made precisely for you. Your prescription is for you, not me. We wouldn't want to wake up tomorrow and switch eyeglasses because yours are made for you and mine are made for me. Same goes with prosthetic limbs. Both prescription eyewear and prosthetic limbs are made a little different for each user. So imagine if we can apply that concept to our whole body and all of our health. Right now, 3 out of 4 people use some form of vision correction in the United States.
Gonzalez says precision medicine accounts for differences in lifestyle, environment, and genetics, and she notes minority populations have been historically underrepresented in clinical trials.
Most clinical studies have been Caucasian males.
Gonzalez adds her half-Cuban, half-Puerto Rican background is part of why she joined the program.
It gives me an opportunity as a minority and as an underrepresented community, as a female and as a Hispanic, part of the Hispanic population, to have a voice in research. So for me personally, that was one of the reasons I joined. Another reason I joined is because multiple sclerosis runs in my family, in my immediate family, and I know that if the research doesn't get done, the cycle will only continue.
Along with facts on the program, the mobile exhibit is filled with statistics about health risks to different minority groups. The display also features hands-on activities like virtual reality, where participants simulate using prosthetic limbs to complete tasks. Wearing a headset, NMSU civil engineering freshman LaVince Cooper tries his virtual hand at watering plants. Cooper says the exhibit taught him about breakthroughs in precision medicine like glasses and prosthetics.
It was a pretty neat experience. I got to experience how it felt to wear glasses because I'm a little nearsighted, but it was kind of weird to put myself in another person's point of view and to put on a prosthetic arm. It was difficult at first, but then it just took a while for me to develop the motor skills to be able to complete the task.
To join, volunteers create an account and answer survey questions about their demographics. Hotel, restaurant, and tourism management junior Evan Stanfield says he enrolled because he thinks it's important for researchers to work with a database of diverse people.
Yeah, my mom is a nuclear med technician, so she's worked in the medical field a lot, so I've been around a lot of medical field events, and I think it's important for us to know our medical health and to push for that. I have a twin brother who has different medical needs that I do. So I think that it's important to focus on that. So to be able to share and give my information to a database that can help others, I think is really incredible.
Participants can choose how much information they want to share, which Gonzalez says is protected and not personally identifiable. After completing a consent form, Stanfield gave samples of his urine and blood. Gonzalez says those biosamples are sent to the Mayo Clinic for gene mapping.
They drew my blood, I did a urine test, got my measurements in my waist and my hips, weight, height, so just the basics, but hopefully in those basics, I get to learn more about myself through the app they also have. I found out when I signed up, I downloaded it, answered a few more questions. So I think it's easy and accessible, which I think is super important to college students, and is intriguing because why not?
The results from Stanfield and many more may help researchers develop new ways to treat cancer, diabetes, or Alzheimer's, a disease Stanfield says runs in his family. For Cooper, cancer may be hereditary. While he didn't take part in the clinical portion, Cooper says other people should get involved to strengthen research about African Americans.
I would recommend this to other people. I feel like it was beneficial to me once I found out my results. And I found out even basic little things about like why I don't have freckles. It's because of my melanin levels, and it was interesting to find out that kind of stuff.
So people will take the markers and just give different reasons what made them join.
With the program set to last for at least 10 years, it may take some time before healthcare becomes tailor-made. But participation is the next step, and organizers say they hope the results benefit not only these volunteers, but all of us. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Michael Hernandez.
Now to Living Here, the people and places that make our community special. Coming up, everything you ever wanted to know about Smokey Bear. But first, one of the Borderlands' best-known artists. Living Here introduces us to Tom Lee.
I'm Adair Margot, the founder of the Tom Lee Institute. Tom Lee was a native El Pasoan, born in 1907, went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and trained as an artist who became not just a muralist, but also an illustrator, a World War II artist correspondent, a novelist who illustrated his own books, a portrait painter, a landscapist. He really transcended category, and he was from El Paso and found his nourishment here.
I'm Holly Packard Cobb. I'm the executive director of the Tom Lee Institute. Tom Lee is best known for probably his murals and being a World War II artist correspondent. He did several murals during the New Deal period, and his mural, The Pass of the North, is arguably one of the finest murals of the New Deal period. However, he's also well known as a writer. Two of the books that he wrote were on the bestseller list with Steinbeck and Hemingway and were made into movies. So it's hard to kind of pigeonhole Tom Lee as only an artist because he was also an extraordinary writer as well. The World War II exhibit is really an extraordinary opportunity to see Tom Lee's World War II art. He was the most published artist of World War II, and he had over 7 spreads in Life magazine, which was the most popular magazine at the time. And Tom Lee really felt that it was his duty to report back to the people on the home front what was actually happening during the war. So he portrayed people in a way that showed them in their work, in combat, as well as all different branches of the military, the Navy, the Army, the Marines, and the Air Force.
It is a compilation of what he did over 4 years, traveling over 100,000 miles. Because he had written books and was an illustrator, Life magazine knew there was an artist of note in El Paso and asked him to do an illustration of a cavalry soldier out at Fort Bliss before the war began. They were doing articles on soldiers gearing up for war. That one portrait led to him being the first artist commissioned by Life to cover the war in different theaters. And this is a compilation. All of that art, there were 80 some odd pieces, were given to the U.S. Army Center for Military History by Life magazine, and they're housed at Fort Belvoir. 27 of those works were broken out and now have traveled to the El Paso Museum of Art.
Tom Lee is such an important figure to this region. He's really worth celebrating. And when we have introduced Tom Lee in the schools through curricula, it has given students a new sense of pride in this region. A lot of students think, oh, there's not something great about this region, I want to leave. But when they are introduced to Tom Lee and his art and writings, all of a sudden they begin to see this beautiful borderland region through Tom Lee's eyes.
I'd started the Tom Lee Institute in 2007, which was his centennial. He had passed away by that time. But I wanted to celebrate his centennial, and then we formalized the proclamations that took place in Washington, D.C., in the state of Texas, and in El Paso, declaring at that time, July, because his birthday was in July, Tom Lee Month. We've since changed it to October to coincide with celebration of our mountains.
Tom Lee Month is basically an opportunity to celebrate the impact of Tom Lee on this region. It's an opportunity for people to be able to see this region's history and culture through the eyes of an extraordinary artist. And we celebrate that in a variety of ways. And we attempt to draw in new audiences by doing different kinds of events that appeal to different kinds of people. If one wants to know more about Tom Lee and our activities at the Institute, you can go to tomlee.com and you'll find all things Tom Lee there.
And you can also go online, and some of his books have been reprinted by UT Press. So you can go online, read The Wonderful Country, read The Brave Bulls, and you can find some of his out-of-print books that we hope ultimately to bring back. Tom Lee had a reverence for life. And his work is about life, it's about experiences in life. He saw the value of his paintings as what remained of life.
Early 1950, late 1949, when then Dad moved to Santa Fe, to where he became head of law enforcement for the game department. He was also the game department pilot, and he flew the plane. May of 1950, as I recall, they pretty well established that it was a campfire that had gotten out of control, is how it happened. It was a Capitan Gap, Capitan, New Mexico. Then Dad flew the plane to Capitan to help with the fire. He would fly over the fire and then come back and report what was happening, and he would help with that. Well, then while he was there, somebody pointed out, says, there's a bear up in that tree. And when the guy that was in charge of the fire crew said, leave it alone. He said, the mother will come and get it, so don't get it. Then the next crew that came out, that was with the soldiers, he didn't pay any attention to anybody. He just climbed up 12 feet up in the air while he climbed up and got this cub bear out of the tree. Dad says, well, you know, the bear's looks like its feet are a little bit blistered and looks like it may need a little help. Why don't you let me take this bear and I'll fly it and take it back to Santa Fe to a veterinarian, and they'll look after it a little bit. Loaded the bear into the Piper Cub airplane he was flying, and he flew back to Santa Fe. And well, then he took it to the veterinarian by the name of the vet. His name was Smith. Took the bear and he put salve on the bear's feet. And then Dad put it back in the shoebox and brought it to our house where we lived. Being a game warden, he sometimes wild animals that needed help, why he would bring them to the house. And once we took care of it, well, then he would end up taking it either turn it back and loose, or he would take it to the zoo in Albuquerque. And so then Mother asked Dad, what are we going to feed this bear? Did they fed it anything? He said, well, the only thing I know is they fed it some candy bars and milk. And well, what did the veterinarian say to feed it? He said, he didn't tell me anything about how to feed it. Well, my little sister, by the way, was there at that time. She was 4 or 5 years old. She still was on a bottle. She carried a bottle around with milk in it. Mother went and she mixed up a mixture of pablum and milk and honey, and mixed it as a mixture. And then we put it in a bottle, and then we cut the nipple where it was a pretty large hole, and sure enough, the bear loved it. So that's what we fed that bear. You have to be careful, or he would snap at you, but I learned how to deal with him, you know. I still had a few scars on my hand. Dad did too. And at the same time, I also had a Cocker Spaniel black puppy called Jet. He's about the same size, a little bit smaller than the bear. And so in the evenings, bring him in the house, and the two would play. And they would wrestle around with each other, and the bear would jump on the dog and hold it down and chew on his ears. The dog would bark and scream and yell, and then he'd get up and then the bear would run, and then the dog would run after it and try to bite it. So then come June, the arrangements were made to fly the cub bear to Washington, D.C. Well, Piper Cub Airplane Organization donated a plane to fly the bear back. When they took him there, I asked my dad, I said, how long is Smoke going to live in Washington, D.C.? He says, well, Don, he says, you know, in the wild, a bear will probably live about 12 years. Now, 10 years later, took Judy out to the zoo. One of the well-known photographs or pictures that are shown, and they stood by the bars where Smoke was. By the way, he's full grown now. It looked like Smoke was helping hold up the poster. Well, Smoke lived 26 years in Washington, D.C. 1976 he died. Be best if he's buried in Capitan, New Mexico, where he was born. He'd go back to his hometown. The whole point of the thing is that the Smokey the Bear program is such an outstanding program. It's wonderful. In other words, it is known, well, it's known throughout the world, Smokey Bear is.
This isn't just a bear, and this wasn't just a story that happened somewhere. It's here, it's in New Mexico, it's Capitan, it's right there, and that's to me one of the fun things about it. You're like New Mexico royalty, because you have this like legacy that's really well known in New Mexico, but then actually, like what Dad said, the icon, you know, whatever, is like known all really around the world. I remember at a young age that my grandpa had a certain notoriety about him. And then when we talked about Smokey Bear, but really the idea of Smokey, or what the impact that he had on our family, was really more about my grandfather. And then we had the pictures and we had the different awards and all those kinds of things around at his house. He was a good grandpa. He did things with us every year. On Christmas, I remember my grandma and grandfather would give us things. And so we had stuffed Smokey toys, you know, Smokey Bear, like stuffed animals. One time we got like a whole kit, buttons and coloring books and like stickers and things like that. And for my granddaughters, and so now we have like a 7 and a 4-year-old, and then they like to represent Smokey. They proudly wear their Smokey Bear attire, and they have Smokey Bear stuffed animals too. And it's like the tradition carries on.
Only you
can prevent
wildfires.
The Chihuahuan Desert is full of shrublands, but it hasn't always been that way. Michael Hernandez spoke with a research scientist at New Mexico State University to learn about the desert's changing landscape.
Dr. Deborah Peters is a research scientist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Jornada Experimental Range north of Las Cruces. Peters says desert landscapes have changed in the past, and that can help us understand how climate change may impact vegetation. Peters says a process called desertification turned the Jornada del Muerto more desert-like over the course of about a century. From the 1850s through the mid-1900s, she says factors like severe long-term drought and cattle overgrazing turned the region once covered by perennial grasslands into a landscape dominated by shrubs, such as mesquite, creosote, and tarbush.
They were always here. They're actually native species, but they were in small abundances, so they were scattered around. And then they, with many head of cattle and severe drought, okay, the shrubs expanded and the grasses died out. And so now we have very few perennial grasses and lots of shrubs. And that's the landscape that you see today.
But Peters says studies at Jornada have found changes in vegetation taking place since then, such as the introduction of novel species and the switch from shrub growth back to grasses.
Because our system is actually, our landscapes are very dynamic instead of just a one-way change from grasses to shrubs. So they can go from shrubs towards grasslands. They can go between different shrub systems. They can actually have other types of grasses come in from South Africa. So it's a very dynamic system across the landscape. We talk about landscape change instead of just one direction, which is desertification.
Peters says the amount of precipitation southern New Mexico receives, about 9 to 10 inches a year, influences which vegetation grows. For example, she says black grama grasslands flourished in 2008 after 4 wet years. Meanwhile, shrubs like mesquite increased following dry years. Those shrubs, Peters says, provide some benefits for the desert.
Our shrubs do some good things. So the mesquite, actually, the pods are really good for wild animals. The creosote and the mesquite actually hold the soil down, right, where they are. So they're not all bad. Right, and they're not really going anywhere. So we're talking about our grasses sort of filling in the bare areas between the shrubs to reduce the soil and to reduce the erosion by wind and water. Right, so that's the benefit that we get by putting more grasses back into the system.
But record-breaking drought and increasing temperatures may make it a challenge for those grasses to grow. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas had their second hottest August on record in 2019. That followed a July that was the hottest month on record for the planet since record-keeping began 140 years ago. Regardless of how much rain falls in the desert, Peters says how landscapes respond is not only related to climate, but also the ability of plants to respond.
Are the plants able to produce seed? How much they can actually grow? Are there even grasses there? Right? Are the shrubs still living there? I mean, it just depends upon what's happening on the landscape, not just is it going to increase or decrease in precipitation. So it actually depends upon what the plants are doing and how much their ability to respond.
And how drastically climate changes in the desert depends on humans' ability to respond. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Michael Hernandez.
We were established in 2015 as a nonprofit, but I've been rescuing horses all my life. And the thing that we want to do is educational outreach to help people understand how to take care of horses. And so there's less horses that end up unwanted. We've been a sanctuary because we've not been able to adopt out. We've been keeping the horses for the rest of their lives. We would love to be able to have the ability to bring horses in, find them good homes, and help more all along the way. I have grown up a Buddhist, and Dharma is a word actually from the Sanskrit. It comes from Dri, D-H-R-I, which means to support or uplift. And the other thing with Dharma, it kind of means the ultimate expression of compassion. And that's what we have here, is an absolutely non-toxic environment. We don't use chemicals, we don't use aggression, we don't use toxic things here. And that's why everybody feels safe and peaceful here. And that's important. We are completely reliant on donations, and we've been very blessed in many ways. Just to feed these horses their hay, it's $1,000 to $1,200 a month. This is Lung Ta, which means wind horse in Tibetan. And this is an Irish draft horse. He's about 18, 19 years old, and a friend of mine rescued him, and he's adorable, and we love him, and he works some with special needs people. But he has scars in his eyes. So his eyesight's a little bit compromised. he's had something rough in his life, and yet look at him, he's just this sweet, sweet boy. We have wonderful people who come and help us take care of the horses, because just one or two people, my husband and I, can't do it by ourselves. And the horses need daily care. The mucking and keeping their pens clean, part of that hygiene that helps with their health. A lot of these horses have had experiences where they are worried about people, they will feel fear, there are triggers that we don't even know about will hit, and then they'll have a reaction. The more they're around the gentle people, they begin to trust again. And they have varying degrees of problems, things that they have to overcome. We're hoping to show people that hang on to your horse. We don't have to give up on them, and we like to be that example. They have saved me. I have had a lot of bad things happen in my youth. If there hadn't been horses, I would not have continued. They gave me a reason to go on, and they gave me this life now. We see nothing but good in all of them. Hey, kiddo. Good boy. People who want to make an appointment can email me, can call us. Our website is the best place to get in touch with us. It has all of our contact information, and it's dharmahorse.org. If there was one thing I would say to Las Cruces and to everybody that helps us, it's just thank you, thank you.
Maya, congratulations on being named a top teen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here today. I would like to start with some of your school activities.
Well, the two main things I'm involved with at Centennial is student government. I've been the freshman to junior class president, and then I also do National Honor Society.
Fabulous. How about ways that you give back to the community?
It's also through student government and National Honor Society. I do a lot of the, cleanups like Toss No Moss. We go to Sagecrest and the old folks' homes and, do activities with them. And I've also done a lot of work with like animal shelters and things like that.
All right. Finally, tell me about your plans for the future.
My plans are to come here to go to school, and I'll start off with a biology degree because I really like science, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
So you're going to be an Aggie?
Yes.
All right. Well, congratulations on being a top teen.
Thank you.
That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now noon to 2, and All Things Considered 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us with your story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.